and there's some of you who need to step back, and moved Phil and seconded Raph. Put that, those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed carried. Thank you.
The geckos are doing well.
Yeah. Central Plains Joint Committee. I suspect this won't be quite as short. Ian would like to come and answer questions. So the recommendation from Strategy and Finance is to withdraw a set of... Are there any questions on...
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ian. I'd like to ask, what are the implications of either staying in as a set law, or the implications either way, staying in or withdrawing?
There really aren't.
As you see them.
There really aren't any implications. We're a set law, but the trustees have the responsibility and all the powers they need to administer the trust and make sure it meets the objects of the trust, and we don't have any liability at all.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Dave.
Phil and I were representatives on this, and other commitments have actually prevented us getting to any meeting to date. Haven't had any. Well, they had it. I say, but they had a couple.
They have one in Darfield.
Is there a need for councillor representation ongoing, or do we become defunct?
As Kelvin Coe mentioned in his letter of last year, the scheme has reached the point where stage 1 is now open and up and running. They're operating it. There was always going to be a review of some sort at that stage because things have moved from the planning stage, the resource consent stage, into the construction and operation. Central Plains Water Limited has obviously been responsible for the construction phase. The trust owns the resource consents but have licensed the company to use them. The trust is there to make sure that the resource consents are used in accordance with the granting of those consents. And it has a mix of Ngaitahu, farming, environmental representatives, and appears to get on and monitor the things it needs to monitor and manage the things it needs to manage without a great deal of input from either council. Obviously, Selwyn has more skin in the game than we do. It has a financial commitment, and I think just recently it agreed to advance further funds. We don't have any financial implication, any financial interest in the work of the trust. So, you know, all Selwyn want to know is, are we in or are we out? It doesn't really bother them one way or the other. They just would like to know.
Okay.
As a settler, we're obviously going to go out, but my question really was, is there a need for this council or a desire for this council to still have some representation on the trust?
The only powers we have are to appoint or remove trustees. It's really up to the council as to whether or not it wants to.
So all you're going to decide is whether you withdraw as a settler of the trust, and if you decide against that, then you obviously remain as a settler of the trust. So are there any other questions of Ian? Yanni?
Yeah, so really what we're talking about is giving up the power to appoint trustees.
Yeah, basically.
Or remove trustees.
Yep.
So is there, I can't see the reason why we would give up that power if we were concerned about protecting some of the environmental things. So ensuring that we had trustees that had a focus on environmental rather than commercial would seem to be inherently good if we wanted to look at some of the outcomes that have caused concern. So what's the benefit, or what's the benefit in not being able to appoint trustees by withdrawing from it?
Look, I'm not going to go into bat either for or against on this. At the moment, it is what it is. We are a settlor. We have the power to appoint or remove trustees. If you want to retain that interest, that's fine. If you don't, then that's fine too. All Selwyn wants to do is know whether we're in or out. And I wasn't sure, which is why it's come to the committee and the council to...
And so the recommendation from Strategy and Finance rather than from Ian is the withdrawal.
Yep.
Yeah. Andrew, it's yours a question?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm interested in the relationship between ourselves remaining, the council remaining as a settlor of the trust, and the positions of the two councillors that we have on the Central Plains Water Joint Committee. Is the membership of the Joint Committee directly related to the whether we remain a settlor issue, or are they two separate issues?
The purpose of the committee was to meet and discuss any issues that might arise with the trust. If we're not going to be a settlor, there appears little point in remaining on the joint board.
So the two effects essentially are that we would no longer be able to appoint trustees, and we would no longer have that representation on the joint committee.
Yes, it'd be...
And the two are related, obviously.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions for Ian?
I wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, you make a comment, but are there any more questions? No? Okay, you're off the hook, Ian, and we're now on to comments. Go for it, Phil.
I just want to say that given the short time, well, some of these things can take quite a bit of time. If council want to remain as settlers, so be it. I don't have a strong view either way. It doesn't seem to be a lot of skin in the game for us. But for example, if Councillor East wants to remain on, and if another council would like to be a settler too, I'm fine with that. But basically, I don't have the time to attend the meetings given my other workload. I just want to say that.
Okay, that's fine. Andrew, then Glenn.
Yeah, I've not heard anything that convinces me that we should withdraw as a settlor. I believe that there are potentially, and I appreciate there have been very few meetings and very little activity in this space, but that's not to say that there wouldn't be in the future. I think there are environmental concerns that we may want to have the ability to be involved in, and certainly there are regional economic impacts which come about as a result of Central Plains Water that the city would have some interest in as well. So for that reason, I would suggest that we remain as a settlor. I think having two councillors involved is a good idea, and I certainly have heard what Phil Clearwater has just said regarding his capacity to continue in that role, but certainly would like to look at appointing a second person. And I haven't had this conversation, but I was wondering whether Councillor Pauline Cotter would be interested in doing that.
Well, shall we come to whether we stay as a settler of the trust, and then if you want to appoint an
Secondary
additional
issue,
one?
yeah.
So you give notice that if that is lost and we stay on, that you would like to move an amendment to appoint an additional trustee?
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we're just going to come to a vote. It'll just be yes or no. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you. This is the kind of report in a way you would think is quite innocuous. It looks like it could fly under the radar, but 2007 and around that time was huge, and the whole Central Plains water scheme provoked huge upset in the community. So my question here is, which way do we go on this? Do we stay in or not? We may not have any kind of skin in the game that Ian was talking about, but politically, there's some big questions to think over, to mull over, and in terms of exercising leverage, are we better to stay in or not? So I think we just need to proceed carefully. My inclination is actually to stay at this point. I think it's spelled settlor too, L-O-R. But I'm open to counter-arguments to that.
Okay, are there any other counter-arguments?
Well, I mean, I've looked at this. I see no reason for us to be a settler. The trust was set up for a specific reason. That's been carried out in terms of setting up Central Plains Water. We have no shareholding in it, no interest in it. It's way outside our boundaries. And as we're often complaining about these people being involved in our business, this is not our business. I don't think we need to be involved. If people want to be involved, well, good luck to them. But there hasn't been a meeting for 3 years, and it just seems...
And nobody's noticed.
So there's no reason for us to be.
Okay,
Appropriate to ask Raph a question or not?
no.
No?
No, but you could probably word it in a speech.
Okay, all right.
It's
just
a
quickly.
good challenge for you, Ali.
I understand what Raph's saying, and I totally hear what Andrew's just said as well.
That one next to you.
Yeah. And what concerns me is we know about the issues of water, related to water in the wider Canterbury area. There are some who feel far more is being taken than should be and is affecting our rivers and the quality of our water. So even though it's outside our boundaries, I don't think it is separate to the city and what affects our city. And that's the issue that I have some concerns about. Yeah.
So what I intend to do is put 1 and 2 separately when you've finished looking. I don't know if Raf got the question out of that one.
I think you have to understand.
But no, it wasn't. Good try though. Yanni.
In the wider context of the work we're doing, particularly around the Three Waters strategy, which is in its early days and it's kind of getting developed, actually, I think we've acknowledged through that process that water is a region-wide issue. And my reluctance to remove as a settler of this trust, and can I say, I've always had strong concerns about the Central Plains Water Scheme and the impact on the environment, and some of the ways and processes by which it was set up, and the consent was transferred as a asset for a company to go and do all sorts of stuff. But the reason I support staying in at the moment is to actually understand what we may be able to utilise being a settler for to get better environmental outcomes of a scheme that's clearly going to go ahead. And of course, we've got a whole Three Waters strategy as well. So until we resolve that Three Waters strategy, I personally can't see the benefit in giving up a right to be a settler to this trust. It may be, as we work through what we want to do in terms of water for our city and the impact that it has across the region, that we decide actually there is no point and we get out of it. Or it may be that we wish to appoint new trustees that have a different focus than a commercial focus and maybe have some environmental understanding. And it's not, one of the questions I asked is who are the current trustees? And I've got a list, I think, from 2012, so it would be good just to check around that, because I think there was also a change made a few years ago around Ngāi coming on board. I'm not sure if it as a trustee or as part of the company. So there are wider issues at play here than just whether we want to be a member. I personally think we need to improve, this is not just around Central Plains, but a number of external organisations or committees, or the lack of oversight and regular monitoring and correspondence. It was the same with civic assurance.
I'm just reminding you, there's a 3-minute speaking time.
So it was the same with these sorts of things where we need a better process to get the invites to the meetings. And if we've got a request to appoint a trustee, we get a paper come to council around the process and around the ability to vote and participate. And I think that's an area that hopefully we can start to address. But I don't think that's a reason to get out of it simply because we haven't been doing what we should have been doing, if that's been the case.
So we have arguments in favour and arguments against, and unless there's any further debate, I'm going to put the first one, that the council received the information contained in the report, moved Raf, seconded Tim. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. And then the second one, moved Raf, seconded Jamie, that the council withdraw as a settler of the trust. And what we'll do is, can we just have a show of hands? Is that okay? So if you're in favour of withdrawing, please raise your hand. 1, 2, figuring it's going to be lost. And if you're not in favour of withdrawing, please raise your hand. So that's more than 2. Okay, right. Okay, so that's lost. And then you gave notice, Andrew, that you wanted to move an additional trustee, is it? Is it a trustee?
Well, we replace Phil Clearwater as a member of the joint committee with another councillor, and I'm suggesting, but I haven't had this discussion with Pauline yet.
Is Pauline okay with the suggestion that's been made?
That Pauline be that person.
Okay, so the suggestion moved Andrew and seconded Phil, or maybe you can't because you're affected, Tim? Yep, is that Phil be replaced on the joint committee with Pauline? Okay, I'll put that, unless there's any huge debate. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. Pauline took no part and Phil took no part. And is that the only one?
Yep.
Right, so are we through that one now? Awesome. So that's item 3, and then that's that whole item. Right, so we've carried that, we've done that one, and now we're on to agenda items.
If they're just sitting about.
Another, the minutes of 21 January, moved Raf, seconded Jamie. Put those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, carried. Item 36.